The room appears calm and ordinary, creating the sense that attention has been resting here longer than expected.
Awareness settles without announcing when observation actually began. Details register as though they were noticed moments before attention acknowledged itself.
The scene feels encountered midway through an act of looking.
Time appears to have been passing before awareness took note of it. Nothing within the space signals a clear beginning of observation. The environment feels accepted by attention before attention notices itself. Clarity exists without a memory of choosing to look.
Objects appear already processed by perception.
The scene suggests observation without revealing its starting point.
Attention feels aligned, though its entry remains untraceable. Nothing within the frame indicates when watching actually began.
The present feels already in progress.
Awareness appears to arrive after observation has already settled.
The act of watching feels discovered rather than initiated.
Observation seems to have been underway before it became noticeable.
Awareness feels continuous, despite the absence of a first moment. Nothing contradicts the sense of having already been watching. The room offers no evidence of a beginning.
Continuity feels intact, without an origin.
Watching persists without marking its own start. Attention continues without resolving when it began.
The present feels uninterrupted, despite the absence of an entry point. Nothing confirms when awareness first engaged. The room feels ready to continue being watched.
The room remains recognizable, yet one relationship between light and object no longer behaves as quietly assumed.
Light appears to have chosen a resting place that attention did not expect.
Cause and outcome remain present, though their connection feels slightly delayed. Orientation shifts appear only after attention has already accepted them. Shadow structure begins implying a logic that does not fully agree with itself. Light begins favoring a direction that the window does not sufficiently explain.
Reflections begin referencing positions that feel subtly reassigned.
Distance stops operating as a reliable indicator of illumination. Surface responses begin duplicating without prompting a clear cause. Directional certainty weakens while the room itself remains calm.
Light begins organizing itself into patterns that feel unrequested. Object posture begins implying adjustment without observable movement.
Depth cues begin quietly exchanging their expected roles.
Expected gradients reverse without urgency or announcement.
Correspondence between form and result begins loosening.
Single inputs begin producing more than one visual outcome. Spatial logic bends slightly without collapsing. Orientation shifts begin feeling selective rather than shared.
Separation between object and surface begins quietly eroding.
Light starts referencing the object rather than its source. Distance stops predicting clarity in expected ways.
Hierarchies of visual attention quietly dissolve. Alignment inconsistencies accumulate without escalation. Causal direction becomes quietly ambiguous.
The room continues functioning while becoming harder to intuit.
The room reacts as though its responses arrive a moment after they should. Visual effects continue even after their causes feel complete. The room begins holding more than one moment at once.
Conflicting time cues coexist without resolving.
Cause and effect stop agreeing on when events occur. Expectation begins arriving before observation confirms it.
Visual information begins repeating instead of updating.
The moment feels present without feeling current. The room begins carrying visual memory alongside perception. More than one moment occupies the same visual space. Effects no longer conclude when their causes end. Recognition begins arriving after perception.
Time indicators quietly disagree. The present begins feeling slightly retrospective.
Object and environment stop feeling simultaneous.
Change begins feeling buffered rather than immediate.
The scene gives the impression of having already occurred.
Temporal reference points slide without direction.
Visual memory overlaps with current input.
The scene feels slightly behind itself. Completion no longer follows change immediately. The present stretches without advancing.
The room behaves like a memory still forming.
The scene appears to wait for itself. Time no longer occupies a single position within the room.
The room presents itself as complete, without signaling whether this moment is beginning or continuing.
Visual order returns in a way that feels quietly sufficient.
Elements settle into relationships that no longer request interpretation.
Orientation stabilizes without referencing any prior variation.
Balance returns quietly without clarifying what came before.
Light resumes behavior that no longer invites scrutiny.
Visual complexity reduces without implying an ending.
The environment settles into a readable condition.
Orientation holds in a way that resists reinterpretation.
Cause and effect appear reconnected without commentary.
Spatial logic reasserts itself without acknowledgement.
Continuity replaces variation without announcement. The room no longer implies progression.
Nothing within the frame suggests alteration.
The scene feels sufficient without asserting finality. Stability persists without indicating duration. The present loses distinction from other moments.
Temporal markers lose relevance when repetition feels exact.
Recognition replaces curiosity. Nothing appears unresolved.
The environment offers completion without explanation.
Nothing suggests a next moment. The scene feels complete in a way that implies recurrence.
Observation no longer produces discovery.
The room appears ready to be experienced again.